Hi, morning everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi. So this is our video for Safeguarding Week, and we're going to talk about partnership working and about the early help process and how early help can help families. So I brought together a group of people from different organisations to talk, and our partners actually who we work with. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So first, Jan.
I'm Jan Hooper, Welfare Manager at Chenderrit School, which is a secondary school on the very south of Northants.
Hi Jan, thanks. Nikki?
I'm Nikki Grove. I'm the Operational Safeguarding Lead at Lodge Park Academy in Corby.
Hi Nikki, thanks for coming today. Darlene?
My name's Darlene Beecham and I'm a targeted support practitioner and I'm based in Penrith Drive in Wellingborough.
Hi Darlene, thank you. And Paulette?
Hi, I'm Paulette and I'm an early help coordinator and I cover the Wellingborough area of Northamptonshire.
Again, thank you everybody for agreeing to participate in this. Thank you ever so much. So one of the things that we want to talk about today is why is early help so important for our families in Northamptonshire. So I'm going to go to you, Nikki. Why do you think early help is so important?
It's about putting that right support in at the right time for the family and not letting things escalate. If we go in and offer that support, the right support early on, when families first start to show signs of struggle, it makes a huge difference. Yeah,
I agree. Jan?
I think if we get that early support in place, that right support at the right time, it's we'll get better engagement from the parents because they feel that we've listened to them from the get-go. The intervention tends to be shorter and I think we have better long-term outcomes.
Okay. Darlene?
Yeah, I think getting the support in early is better because then before they reach crisis point, before family breakdown, possible escalation.
Yeah. Paulette, have you got a thought on that?
I agree with everything everyone else said. It's vital that we get that help in as early as possible. It reduces, we get that help in early, and as Jan said, it can be a short piece of work. It can prevent children being traumatised long term if we can kind of get in and sort out those problems at a very, very early stage. It also helps to increase parents' trust with our partners, rather than something happening later on down the line and being, a social care referral being made, and then it can damage those relationships between parents and our education providers.
Following on from that, I think that the one of the, you're saying about the social care intervention, which is where we don't want to go, isn't it? And actually that becomes more costlier. So the more that we go up the steps of intervention, the more costlier it becomes. And we do have to think about things like that as well as the family. I mean, the family is the most important thing. So whatever cost it takes, but sometimes we do have to look at the purse strings as well and make sure that we're, using our money well in this county. I totally agree. So what difference do you think the right help at the right time for the family makes? So the difference, have you got any examples of that, Jan?
So that right help at the right time, I think the most important bit is at the start where we get that family engagement. That family generally, if it's early intervention, they are asking for the help rather than we are then saying we're going to make that referral to social care. So that early help, we've got that family on our side, working with us. And I think the outcomes from that are much better because parents are feeling supported very early on when they've asked for the help. I forgot what I was going to say now.
Okay.
I've had families that have come to me in those very early stages in year 7, where they've asked for support within the family because they're struggling with their children settling into Chenderrit. They're struggling with adolescence, the onset of adolescence. So helping parents, particularly around behaviour management, understanding those adolescent years, has a huge impact on then that student carrying on their time through tenure at school. If we don't get that, if we don't start looking at intervention until they get into year 10, then it's much harder to engage with that family, because we've lost that trust very early on, because they generally do ask, you know, in year 7, they are asking for the help. If we're not able to provide it because it's not available, then by the time we get to year 10 and things are out of control, they don't want to work with us because that trust has been lost.
Yeah, I think there's a window of opportunity, isn't there? And I think we need to grasp that, and I'm really quite keen on that as well. Nikki?
I mean, I think I've got an example that I think shows that the power of an early help. I had a student that had been very poorly in hospital, and it was clear mum was struggling with what had happened and managing. And because we put an early help assessment in place and we asked the questions that nobody else had asked, we found out that the boiler was broken and she was worrying about keeping the house warm, that there was no downstairs toilet and the student couldn't go up the stairs during the day, so was having to use a plastic isolation tub as a loo. And mum felt isolated. So they were really easy, quick fixes for somebody to sit in an office and make those calls and make those changes for her when she wasn't in a place to make those changes, because she was caring for a child. It was quite easy for me to phone round and find somebody to fix the boiler for free, and to get a commode to the house, and to get carers supporting mum. Ever so easily sorted, but made a massive difference to that family and outcome for that young person who recovered quicker. Mum was able to not worry about those things and her daughter getting poorly again.
That's a really good example, Nikki. Yeah, absolutely. Asking those right questions at the right time as well. You know, that's a fantastic example. Brilliant. Darlene?
Yeah, I had a family. It was a single mum with a daughter, and the family was at risk of breaking down because the daughter was displaying negative behaviours at home and at school. So at home, she would become angry, she would punch things, kick things, and she was getting in trouble with the police. And then at school, she was displaying anger at school as well, and aggression, and spending lots of time in isolation, had been excluded numerous times and was at risk of permanent exclusion. So I went in and met the family. The young person had suffered a trauma when she was younger. So I went into school to see her on a one-to-one basis, built that relationship with her, and she ended up starting to come out and talk to me about how she was feeling. So we sort of got to the bottom of that, and she'd never spoken to her mum about the trauma, so mum and daughter had never had those conversations with each other. So I went back to mum and asked her if she'd, you know, ever spoken to her daughter about what had happened, and mum broke down and said she felt guilty, so that's why she sort of just pushed it to the back of their minds, and they both sort of ignored what was going on, you know, what had happened before. So that, you know, after talking to them both, they started sitting down talking to each other, and their relationship now is completely different to how it was before. It's improved so much.
That's amazing.
At school, there was an issue at school that school didn't realise. I think they just put it down to her usual behaviour, not realising there was an issue with one of the teachers. So removed the child from that class, and now she's doing really well. And that was about a year ago, and mum is still in contact with me now, telling me how well she's doing in school. So yeah,
so that we can see the long-term effects of that intervention and what you did, and the fact that and that's really fantastic, Darlene. That's a really, really good example as well.
Michelle, can I come in with my example of early help?
Of course you can.
Recently had. So we had a student that had really poor attendance to school. It was down to about 36%. And we went out and visited the family home in the end, and we came to the conclusion that, well, we found that mum was really unwell, had been really unwell for some time, and the young lady was staying at home to look after mum. Mum embarrassed to share that information with school. But after the conversations we had with her, we managed to contact adult social care. We got a package put in place of care for mum so that the girl could come back into school. Young carers supported the student as well. We've managed to get food parcels delivered. We've made sure that there's a Christmas meal going out to the family that they only just have to pop in the microwave for over the Christmas period. And that young lady's attendance has been 100% since we were able to go into the home and find out what was needed.
Oh, that warms my soul, Jan. That's a lovely example as well. That's a really, really fantastic. Thank you for that. And it does show the power of that intervention, doesn't it? That early intervention, listening, hearing what people say, and some really good partnership work in there. Fabulous. Paulette, have you got anything you want to talk about you know, what the difference of the right service at the right time to the right family can make?
Yes, I have. If you don't mind me giving an example as well, Michelle.
No, go for it. It's brilliant.
You know, the EHA come into us, or we will speak to families and suggest an early health assessment. And I spoke to a particular family, mum and a dad with two boys, and you know, mum was saying that one of the boys, his behaviour was difficult to manage. He was aggressive at home towards the family. Discussed an EHA with her, and she agreed to that, and I agreed to go along to the first TAF meeting because I just had a few sort of concerns with some of the things that the way she was talking about her younger son. So I attended the TAF meeting. It was clear to me that there was a parenting need. So we sort of had those delicate conversations with parents to suggest parenting support. And with this family, in fact, I put tier 3 support in the home because I was really concerned about the relationship between the brothers and mum's relationship with the younger son and mum's emotional well-being. So I put targeted support in for that, requesting mum to get help with her emotional well-being, some healthy relationship work with the family. I asked for some sort of attachment work to be looked at as well, because the expectations the parents had towards a young child they were perhaps a bit unachievable, and you know there's a lot of comparing the two children. So I put that support in really early. Often we'd say, okay, let's go and do a parenting course and come back to us. But I just felt with that one there was a need to get that support in immediately. So that's gone to targeted support. Only thing for me is I don't see what happens after that, you know, unless I actually bring up the practitioner or check the records. But right now they're still working with the family. That's what I can do.
That's brilliant. That's a really good example as well. And I know we don't always see the benefits of it, but I think at that time, but maybe that family will feel the benefits of what you've done there, Paulette, by moving them forward for that targeted support, which they really needed. I've got quite a nice example as well. In August of August of this year, I did some training with my team around serious case reviews, and we did some rapid review, sort of looking at the outcomes from the rapid reviews. So we did a morning of training, and then the following day, one of my early help coordinators from my team rang a family up to discuss an incident that had happened, and they'd got a young baby, and the baby was crying lots, and they weren't getting any sleep, and they'd had a little bit of a row, and that's how they'd been referred in, that one of the neighbours had heard them rowing. And so she was asking the right questions as well, and so she realised that obviously they were really struggling with this newborn baby. And so she gave them advice and guidance, asked them to speak to their health visitor, and you know, really sort of put that early intervention in. And then just before she ended the call, she thought, she remembered the training from the day before, and she said, can I just ask you about your safe sleeping? Do you know what safe sleeping is? And the guy on the phone, the father, said, well, yeah, we do, but we're having really bad problems at the moment because the cot hasn't come and the baby's grown out of the Moses basket, or the small thing that they had him in. And so they'd got this baby sleeping in some form of sling. thing. And so my early help coordinator said, listen, I'm going to get you some really good safe sleeping advice as quickly as possible. Put the phone down. We had a conversation, and then we rang the health visiting team up, and Duty Health rang him straight away to give him safe sleeping advice. And although we can't measure that, you know, but hopefully that learning from those serious case reviews, learning from you know, recommendations, meant that she asked that right questions at the right time. We can't evidence whether that made a difference, but you know, how brilliant was that? And so that just started off a process then, as I say, where the health visitor became involved straight away for that family, and they really needed it. So that's I just think I was just really pleased with that. And that just shows that training helps, doesn't it? We need that time to be able to look at things like serious case reviews, recommendations, learning, and we need to embed that into our practice. And you know, for me, I think that's just as important as the day-to-day work that we do as well, you know, learning, etc. So that was my example of that. So there is some discussions around maybe simplifying the early help assessment. And Jan and Nikki, you both use that in your work. Tell me, Jan, do you think, how would that help if it is simplified for the families?
I think sometimes completing the early help assessment, you fill in the boxes for filling in the boxes' sake.
Yeah.
I think there's not always the real clarity of information on those forms. I think for parents, sometimes they feel intimidating when you know, when you're sat there filling them in. I also find them quite frustrating that they're online. I'd still, you know, like to sit there and have the form, and so would a lot of the families that I work with. You know, they raise that. But I think also to cut down the time it takes to complete an early help assessment would be a good thing, and you know, to ensure that we've got the information on there that we need, and not lots of information that we don't need. Yeah,
that's really great, Jan. Yeah, Nikki.
I mean, it is better than it was when we used to do the old CAF forms. So because they were a bit of a mission. But I totally agree with the fact, I don't like the fact I can't show the parents what I'm going to submit, which when we did it before and you could type it up and say to the parents, are you happy if I submit this? I felt they felt more in control. Whereas when you're taking notes that you're then going to type up onto an online form, there's quite a lot of trust there that you're asking the parent to give you, because they're not going to read it before you submit it. So that's, I feel, can be a bit of a barrier. I think, yes, we know our families that we're doing the assessment for, and we know the areas that we need to be looking into. So to have items on the form that you have to ask about which aren't relevant, takes a little more time.
I think I've had some discussions recently around, sometimes a family will present to us with a certain issue, and then we're asking them about 100 issues that happened maybe 10 years ago that it's really not relevant to them now. And I think what I mean, although history is important, I know that, but I think there's a way of asking around that, and it's about the issue you're facing at the moment. It doesn't matter that you've come from, maybe somebody's come out of a relationship where there was a previous domestic abuse 20 years ago, and actually at the moment the only issue is the fact that they've got problems with housing, or there's a problem with something else that's totally not relevant to you know, the history, you know. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a really good example, Nikki, really is, you know. The other thing I think for me is that obviously it will be more helpful for families to have that a shorter, they might engage better if it's a shorter assessment, and it doesn't feel like an assessment that is such a long piece of paperwork, which, like you say, can be quite daunting. definitely. I think that we've come a long way. I think, like you said, from the CAF, which was really, really long and very long-winded, to the early help assessment. And I think our signs of safety work that we've been doing, you know, around what's working well, what's not working well, that opens up those conversations as well, doesn't it, around our, you know, what do you need help with, etc. So I think that's really good. Is there anything anybody feels really passionate about, or is there anything that you'd like to see a change in something, or in early help, or is there anything that you're passionate about telling us today about anything that you use or any particular tool? Excuse me.
I really love the Family Star. I don't know if professionals use that one, but I really love that one, where you scale the families in different areas when you first meet them, and then halfway through and then at the end. I think it really shows the progress that has been made, and families are really surprised when you go back to do the second one, because I don't ever tell them what they scored the first time. So they're really surprised actually they are making progress, and things are improving for them. When they don't necessarily realise that themselves, they still feel that things are the same. So it's a good indicator of the
change.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Sorry, Jan, go for it. It's okay, it's fine.
I use the 3 houses in school to get the voice of the child, and I find that a really, really useful tool to get the child talking, you know, about their worries and all the things that are going well, and it's always a good starter that we start with the things that are going well and the things that they would wish for, and then we always then go to the worries, but they've had time to settle in and talk positively before we have to look at, you know, the worries that they're having. I really like that tool.
That's brilliant. Paulette, is there anything that you like to use, or anything that you want to talk about, you know, is there any improvements that we could make, for instance?
No, the only time I speak to the families is when I go along to the staff meeting, sometimes on the phone with the for me, I'm just passionate about the voice of the voice of the child being captured. Because quite often I have conversations with some of my schools, and they'll come to me with concerns, and they haven't captured the voice of the child, so I'll send them back to get that done. Because we can't miss that out, Michelle.
No. Yeah, I agree, and I'll give you one of my passions, and that is I really agree about the voice of the child. However, I think that without getting the voice of the child, we can gain the lived experience of that child. So sometimes I think we get caught up with the voice of the child, and I think that's really important. If we can get that vocal voice of the child, that's really good, but there are going to be times where we can't get that voice of the child. Maybe the child doesn't want to talk, or the child can't talk because they're of an age where they can't, under 5s, for instance. But we can look at the voice of the child in other ways about their lived experience, you know. So it's, you know, have they got friends, you know, what do they look like when they come to school, have they got a packed lunch, have they got you know, are they dressed, are they clean, are they tidy, etc. So there's lots of ways of us using our you know, eyes to gather that, and that is their voice. You know, if they can't talk, they can show you in other ways about how they're feeling and expressing their sadness. They might sit in the playground and not have any friends, and not engage with anybody, or it might be that mum or dad might pick them up, and you notice that they don't even interact with their child. So there's lots of ways that we can look at the voice of the child without actually gaining that voice of the child, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things that I'm really really passionate about, is saying, when people say, oh, I can't get the voice of the child, I normally say, well, can you tell me about that child? Can you explain to me, you know, how they present, etc. So that's my one. Okay, Nikki, have you got anything?
I think with secondary school pupils, working with secondary school pupils, to have those conversations with them makes them feel really valued, and especially when there's issues at home. And I was doing an early help assessment yesterday and gaining the voice of a young person and she was really clear she didn't feel heard in the home environment. And so for somebody to sit with her and say, well, you explain to me what it's like for you. You explain to me, you know, you try and tell me what you're thinking and feeling, and using a bit of reflection techniques to reflect back to her. And she left here, I think, feeling quite empowered and believing that the early help assessment wasn't mum's, it was hers as well. And I felt that would be quite powerful. And I think we'll move forward with that family much quicker because she's brought into the paperwork I was doing, and she felt it was about her and for her, and she had a say in it. And I think that's quite powerful.
That's very powerful, Nikki. I agree.
Just add on to that. Quite a few secondary schools struggle with what material to use to capture the voice of the child, because they said, well, we can't use 3 houses. You know, kids know what we're doing, well, they're, you know, becoming young adults. So recently I put together a package for my schools, material that they can use with the older children that they have there. The other thing I'm passionate about, and I've told Michelle this, is that something that's been, well, I feel has been overlooked, is when mums are in the menopause stage of life and the impact that may have on how they then are parenting their children. And we're trying to look at, consider how that can be, how schools can kind of ask that question, whether it's just a poster on the wall in the room that a parent might look at and go, oh gosh, you know, that's me. Just because I think that's something to be really mindful of.
I agree, and Paulette and I have talked about this outside of this meeting, and I think we've actually seen, haven't we, the age of parents now when you have children. I mean, my daughter's a midwife, and she tells me now that most of her people that come in are in their 30s. So if you work that out, by the time they are having teenage children, they're going to be in that menopause stage of their life. So Paulette, I agree with you 100%. I think that's something that maybe we need to start looking at, you know, and we Paulette and I have talked about maybe pulling health in on that, maybe seeing about the school nurses and to see what they can do around you know, posters or providing you with some information around that. So that's a really good one as well. Well, I think that's been a really fantastic conversation, and I've really got so much out of that, listening to you all and your passion around early help and our partnership working. And I think that's the main thing, is that we work together, schools, targeted support, you know, our team in the MASH, early help coordinators in the locality. I think all of us pulling together for those families is really important. So thank you so much for participating today. I really, really appreciate your time and sharing those experiences with me. Thank you all so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.